In the tense grey dawn of the 1950s, the world held its breath on the knife edge of the Cold War. High above the Iron Curtain, a new kind of terror was taking shape. Gleaming silver giants, American bombers like the B-47 Stratojet were pushing the very limits of speed and altitude. They were more than just aircraft, they were instruments of annihilation, each capable of carrying a nuclear payload that could wipe a city from existence. For the Soviet Union, the sky was no longer a vast empty expanse. It was a highway for potential oblivion. This constant looming threat fostered a deep-seated paranoia within the Kremlin. Their existing fighters, the celebrated MiG-15 and MiG-17, were formidable in a dogfight, but were like guards trying to catch a phantom against these high-flying intruders. The race was on, not just for pride, but for survival. The Soviet engineers were given an almost impossible directive: create an interceptor that could soar into the stratosphere, catch these untouchable bombers, and obliterate them. To do this, they had to shatter a barrier once thought unbreakable: the speed of sound. Not in a gut-wrenching dive, but in level, controlled flight. This wasn't just an engineering problem, it was a declaration of war against the laws of physics. Out of this crucible of fear and innovation, a machine was forged. It was a brutal, twin-engined monster, the Mikoyan-Gurevich MiG-19. A jet so powerful and so revolutionary, it terrified its enemies. But with its raw, untamed performance and treacherous handling, it often terrified its own pilots even more. This is the story of the Soviet Union's first true supersonic fighter, the flawed masterpiece that fired the starting pistol for an arms race in the heavens, and forever changed the face of aerial combat. To truly appreciate the MiG-19, you must first understand the looming danger it was designed to eliminate. In the early 1950s, the fragile balance of power rested on the wings of long-range bombers. America's Strategic Air Command fielded a vast and expanding fleet of jet-powered giants like the Boeing B-47 Stratojet. By 1956, the US had 28 wings of B-47S, with many poised at bases across Europe and Asia, capable of striking deep into Soviet territory. These bombers represented an existential threat. The Soviet Union's existing fighters, the celebrated MiG-15 and its successor, the MiG-17, were masters of a dogfight, but were reaching their limits. They could only break the sound barrier in a steep, often uncontrollable dive, a maneuver as useless for interception as trying to catch a speedboat with a canoe that only goes fast downhill. Looming on the horizon was an even more formidable threat, the B-52 Stratofortress, an intercontinental behemoth built to fly higher and farther than any bomber before it. The Kremlin knew its defenses were wide open. A new breed of interceptor was needed, one that could command supersonic speed in level flight, not just flirt with it. The sound barrier wasn't merely a speed to be broken, it was the next great battlefield. For the Soviet Union, conquering it was a matter of national survival. The order was dispatched to their premier design bureau, Mikoyan-Gurevich, demanding an answer. Their response would be the MiG-19. The creation of the MiG-19 was a desperate sprint against time, and the primary obstacle was raw power. Soviet jet engine technology struggled to produce the immense thrust required for sustained supersonic flight. The Mikoyan-Gurevich team, under the direction of Artem Mikoyan and Mikhail Gurevich, began with a prototype known as the I-360. It was essentially a heavily modified MiG-17, but with a game-changing feature. Two engines, instead of one. Early prototypes were fitted with interim engines that lacked the necessary power. Still, the engineers persisted. A pivotal moment arrived on January 5, 1954, when a prototype designated SM-9, equipped with new engines, finally broke the sound barrier in level flight, a first for any Soviet aircraft. This flight proved the design's potential, but the aircraft was riddled with dangerous flaws. Test pilots reported severe instability as it approached the speed of sound. Early models had a terrifying tendency for the fuel tank, positioned between the two hot engines, to explode in midair. Furthermore, the tail became ineffective at high angles of attack, causing pilots to lose all control. The solution came in the form of a powerful new engine, the Tumansky RD-9B turbojet, and a refined airframe. Learning from a series of harrowing test flights, the design team made critical adjustments. They lowered the horizontal tail, added the MiG-19's distinctive wing fences to better control airflow, and, most critically, introduced an all-moving slab tail on what would become the definitive MiG-19S model. This innovation was like replacing a boat's small rudder with the ability to pivot the entire stern, finally giving pilots the control authority needed at supersonic speeds. Despite these unresolved issues, the urgency to counter the American bomber threat was so great that the aircraft was ordered into production just a month after its first supersonic flight, long before state trials were complete. The MiG-19 officially entered service with the Soviet Air Forces in March 1955. The West got its first glimpse on July 3, 1955, as 48 of the new fighters thundered over Moscow's Tushino airfield during an air show. The MiG-19, which NATO-designated Farmer, had arrived. It was the world's first mass-produced fighter capable of supersonic speed in level flight, beating its American competitor, the F-100 Super Sabre, into operational service. The MiG-19 that first rolled onto Soviet airfields was a flawed masterpiece. It was a brutal, immensely powerful machine, both respected and feared by those who flew it. Think of it as a muscle car of the skies. It offered breathtaking power and acceleration, but was saddled with difficult and unforgiving handling. Its twin RD-9B engines provided a phenomenal thrust-to-weight ratio, enabling it to outclimb and out-accelerate most Western fighters of its era. Its armament was simply devastating. Most variants carried 330mm Noodleman Richter NR-30 cannons. A short burst from these weapons could shred an enemy bomber. As one Pakistani pilot who flew the Chinese version described it, firing the guns really shook the aircraft and made vibrations that could be felt in the seat of the pants. However, this incredible performance came at a steep price. The MiG-19 was notoriously difficult to master. It had a dangerously high landing speed and a propensity for entering deadly spins. A significant challenge was the absence of a two-seat trainer version. Pilots had to transition to this supersonic beast entirely on their own. This process was like being handed the keys to a Formula One car with no prior instruction, and it resulted in a high number of accidents. Furthermore, it was hampered by short range and primitive electronics compared to its Western counterparts. Early production models were plagued with reliability issues, cementing its reputation as a demanding and dangerous aircraft that required immense skill just to fly safely, let alone to fight. This combination of raw power and treacherous handling is what forged the MiG-19's legend. If you're finding this deep dive into Cold War aviation fascinating, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you won't miss our future explorations of other incredible machines. The MiG-19's primary role was to defend Soviet airspace, and it was soon put to the test. Its pilots were scrambled to intercept the high-flying reconnaissance aircraft that the US and its allies continuously sent to probe Soviet defenses. In 1957, a MiG-19 pilot achieved the first visual confirmation of the top-secret Lockheed U-2 spy plane, but he was unable to climb to its extreme operational altitude. The pilots found more success against other intruders. On July 1, 1960, a MiG-19 piloted by Captain Vasily Polyakov intercepted a U.S. Air Force RB-4 7H reconnaissance jet over the Barents Sea. Alleging the American aircraft had violated Soviet airspace, Polyakov made 2 cannon passes, crippling the RB-47 and forcing it into the sea. 4 of the 6 American crew members were killed, and the 2 survivors were captured, triggering a major international incident just 2 months after Gary Power's U-2 had been shot down. In a separate incident in 1964, MiG-19s downed a T-39 Sabre trainer that had entered East German airspace, killing all 3 crew members. However, the MiG-19's most extensive combat record was established in foreign service. Though its career in the Soviet Air Force was relatively brief, it was widely exported. The North Vietnamese Air Force began flying the Chinese-built version, the Shenyang J-6, around 1969. Although it was slower than the more modern MiG-21, Vietnamese pilots appreciated that the J-6 was more maneuverable in a classic turning dogfight, much like a nimble boxer outmaneuvering a slower, more powerful opponent in close quarters. Its heavy cannons proved absolutely lethal against American fighter bombers like the F-4 Phantom to Saint-Dionys. Filing the J-6 claimed 7 victories against U.S. aircraft, all of them F-Force. The jet also saw extensive service with the Pakistan Air Force, which valued its powerful armament and exceptional agility. During the Indo-Pakistani War of 1971, Pakistani F-6S, the export designation for the J-6, engaged Indian aircraft, proving that it remained a highly capable close-in fighter within the Soviet Air Force. The MiG-19 was largely an interim solution, a crucial but temporary bridge between the subsonic and true supersonic eras. Its inherent flaws, particularly its challenging handling and maintenance-intensive engines, meant it was quickly overshadowed by its legendary successor. The lessons derived from the MiG-19 program, both the triumphs and the failures, were invaluable. They directly informed the design of one of history's most iconic and widely produced fighters, the Mikoyan-Gurevich MiG-21. The MiG-21 refined the concept of a lightweight point defense interceptor, combining blistering speed with a more stable and efficient delta wing design. The MiG-19 provided Soviet pilots with their first taste of supersonic combat, preparing them for the Mach 2 world of the aircraft NATO would call the fishbed. Although its service in the Soviet Union was brief, the MiG-19 story was far from complete. China, under the designation Shenyang J6, produced over 4,500 units, far more than the Soviets ever did. The Chinese valued its agility and powerful guns, and the J6 became the backbone of the People's Liberation Army Air Force for decades. These Chinese-made fighters were exported across the globe, serving in more than a dozen countries. With some remaining in limited service well into the 21st century, the MiG-19 Farmer is often the forgotten MiG, overshadowed by the fame of the MiG-15 that preceded it and the global ubiquity of the MiG-21 that followed. Yet it remains a machine of immense historical significance. Born from the existential dread of the Cold War, it was the raw, powerful, and dangerous interceptor that shattered the sound barrier for the Soviet Union, compelled the West to completely reassess Soviet technological capabilities, and accelerated the arms race to incredible new speeds. Though a flawed and demanding aircraft in the right hands, it was a deadly opponent. The MiG-19 was the supersonic jet that forever changed air combat and served notice to the world that the skies were no longer a safe haven. Like and subscribe if you enjoy these videos. Thank you.